Thank you, everybody, for being here. I love that. Can you hear me clear in the back, that back row, Blake? Good. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. We're excited to host this event. We're very grateful to Dixie Tech for hosting us today. President Rushton and Brandy Honey and their entire team have been so great to work with. And I actually just want to give President Rushton a couple minutes to welcome all of you to campus today. So, President Rushton, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jordan. Well, welcome to Dixie Tech, everybody. We're thrilled to have you here. We're really grateful for the space that we have and for you to tell me our community partners like this and gather for very important conversations such as this one today. I think I was talking to my team about this event a couple of days ago, and this is an issue that affects every one of us in this room. It affects our kids, our parents, everybody is affected by this issue. And to give you a couple of examples, we have some nursing faculty openings that we have been trying to fill for the better part of a year. And we hire people, and they accept the position, and they get all excited, and they come and they try to buy a home here. And a month later, they tell us, sorry, we can't do that. We can't come. And we start the whole process over and go through the whole thing. And I know that this story sounds familiar to all of you because you've experienced this. It's not something that is foreign at all to those of us that are here. Just another example. I think in 2018, which was not that long ago, my wife and I bought a 3,000 square foot home on a 3rd-acre lot in Little Valley for $425,000 for the pool. And we felt like, wow, that's a lot of money we're spending, we're stretching ourselves, but we're going to make this work. And about 3 weeks ago, one of my employees here bought a 2-bedroom condo out in Desert Color for more than I paid for that house. I don't know how that works. It's not going to work, right? Like we've got to figure this thing out. If anybody can figure that out, it's the people in this room. I have so much respect for all of you. Grateful for the opportunity I have to rub shoulders with all of you. I think this is going to be a very informative conversation, and it's not the first and it won't be the last, but we at Dixie Tech, we want to be part of the solution and figure out how to make this work. We train a lot of the people who are help building these homes, and it's all just we all play a part. We're all a piece of the pie, and we are dedicated to helping find solutions to this problem. Again, thanks so much for being here. Just some housekeeping items. Restrooms are right through the lobby there to your left. And anything that we can do to make life more comfortable while you're here on the Dixie Tech campus, please let us know. Thanks again.
Thank you, President Rushton. And thank you to this diverse audience. We've got local and state elected officials. I see Senator Vickers is in the room. I saw Representative Joseph Elison walk in. Commissioner Snow is here. Aside from our mayors on the panel, which are Mayors Rosenberg, Staley, Randall, Hart, and Bruno, I see Mayor Halterman of Pirwan here. Mayor Krause is here. I see Mayor Billings from Hurricane. And all of the mayors in the Mayors Association have been very instrumental in bringing this event together today. We also have in the room builders, developers, business owners, and chamber members, nonprofits. We've got our Housing Action Coalition here today, and all of us obviously care about this issue. And as President Rushton said, it's an issue that really impacts our entire community. I know that this is an issue that is top of mind for the cities especially. Exactly 3 years ago this week, similar to President Rushton, I closed on my house in Washington City exactly 3 years ago. It's a modest 3-bedroom home in an Ents development, single family home and my mortgage is just over $1,500 a month. If I were to buy that exact same home today, my mortgage would be $3,200 a month. Now, for someone like me, that is a huge difference every month. So we have to think about what has changed since then. What has changed in the past 3 or 4 years? Consumer prices are up 21% since the year 2020. Building prices have increased nearly 40% since 2020. The median household income needed to afford a median home in our county is at a $30,000 deficit. So our median household income is $30,000 less than what is needed to buy the median home. Land prices are high, and we don't see that changing anytime soon. And COVID really put us on the map, and everyone wants to live here. Who doesn't want to live here? We live in the greatest place in the greatest country. So these are all elements and factors in this equation that government really has no control over. Government doesn't control the cost of building or inflation or household income or land prices. But today we want to focus on the things that government can do and has done to have a positive impact on our housing situation. So this time I'm going to turn it over to Sean Guzman from the City of St. George, and I would invite our mayors on the panel to take their seats. And how the program works, you've got your agenda, but we're going to have a panel discussing what the cities have done and will continue to do to have a positive impact on our housing situation. And then we will open up for Q&A. We've got these 2 mics here as well. So no questions are off limits. The mayors are here to answer your questions and hear your thoughts and get some input from you. And then we will wrap up with some concluding remarks from Mayor Staley of Washington City. Sean.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We have a panel of mayors from Washington County. It was a difficult decision on who to pick to be up here. But what we think is unique about Washington County is we're kind of a microcosm of the state. You have some areas like Moab, think of Park City, where there are resort communities, and the counties are mainly resort type of counties. And we've got Mayor Bruno here from Springdale that faces those same challenges of those resort communities. We've got Mayor Randall, of course, mayor of one of the largest cities in Utah. And then we've got a smattering of cities that are growing rapidly around the borders that we see all around the state. We see them up on the Wasatch Front that were once small communities and now are having to keep up not only with the challenges of building, but the challenges of keeping up with state law. And so we thought, we would take a sampling of the mayors here. They all come from diverse backgrounds too, as far as industry goes, and have them talk about some of the challenges that they face in trying to get an affordable product. The challenges that we just talked about right now. We're going to start off with Mayor Chris Hart from Ivins, and Mayor Hart has been married to his wife for 52 years. So he has a good experience there and how to compromise, right? And find solutions. He's also a home builder, which makes him unique to be a mayor and a home builder, and was actually Home Builder of the Year in 2007. And he is in his 15th year as mayor of Ivins. And Mayor, you have some topics that you were going to touch on today, so why don't you start?
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. It seems like over the last few years there's been a lot of finger pointing going on. Suggestions that either local government, the state legislature, or the building community is responsible for this problem we face, this crisis really we face of affordability in housing. In reality, the real culprit for high-priced housing doesn't fall on any of our shoulders. In fact, we have no control over the main reason that housing prices are so high. And Jordan alluded to that earlier. The free market is the reason that the cost of housing is so high. Scarcity always raises the price of goods and services. And with a 35,000 at last count deficit in or shortfall in housing statewide, we are in the midst of an epic scarcity crisis in housing. So first of all, just briefly to ground this discussion on market forces at hand, the cost of housing is responsive to shortages of various kinds. Labor shortages, or shortages of skilled labor in particular, are a cause of the cost of housing being high. Local, national, even international shortages of essential building materials. We've witnessed cement powder, for example, reinforcing steel, all go through worldwide shortages and supply chain disruptions that have raised the cost of materials that go into a home substantially over the last several years. In addition to that, we have an interest rate now that prevents a substantial portion of the potential market from qualifying to actually buy a home that might be available. And so builders, the building community, is dealing with the fact that we have this enormous shortage, a huge pent-up demand, and perhaps even the majority of those that are looking to get into the housing market unable to do so because of the high interest rates. So also briefly, I want to touch on the difference between the cost of developing housing and producing housing and the purchase price of a home. They're two different things. The purchase price of a home is also market driven, and the same principles of supply and demand apply to that finished product being sold as they do to the various components that go into the production of that product. So right now, an immense shortage in housing, the automatic result of the market forces is to drive the price of a home higher. So the majority of homes that are sold in the state of Utah are produced by volume builders who acquire and develop land, design and build homes, and market those homes in their projects, generally to a model home and so forth. That's the majority. Now there are smaller scale builders, custom home builders in particular, that work on cost-based contracts that are directly tied to the actual cost of producing housing. But in most cases, that's not the case. The price of the home is driven by the housing market. And so a large-scale builder will have an individual or even teams of individuals who are analyzing that market constantly and determining what that purchase price is going to be. So, for example, if we in Ivans were to cut our impact fees in half and say to our residents, our existing residents, you're going to have to put the bill on the other half of this because we need to get the price of housing down. The fact is that it would not change the sticker price on a home at all because it's going to be sold responsive to the market. So here we are as mayors of the various cities. There you are, a development community and business owners and so forth. You in the building community and those who own businesses related to the development of housing are there for one reason, and that is to obtain a profit from that which you do. And the free marketplace says that not only are you entitled to do that, we understand that's why you're doing it, and the expectation is that you are going to do that. So why would any builder sell a home at below market value? Well, maybe conscience. There are builders, I'm sure, who discounted homes and so forth to a buyer for various reasons. But the market determines what that purchase price is going to be. So to quote a new friend from a recent conversation, really the only solution to the housing crisis is going to be an enormous increase in supply. Well, how does that happen? Here in Washington County, we experience a shortage of land available for development because it's not everywhere, because we have so much in the way of federal lands and so forth here. That cost of land is going to remain high. And I don't care who you are, how big a builder you are, you're going to pay a price for that land. We also are a regional market when it comes to labor, and there's a substantial shortage in qualified labor. I think all the builders out here would acknowledge that they probably got a "we're hiring" sign on the front door all the time. So when we look at cities and their influence over the cost of housing, it's actually pretty limited. So in Ivins, the cost, the dollars attached to the price of a new home that come directly from the city in the way of fees, application fees, and so forth, through the development of the land, the permitting process for the home, and so forth, is roughly $20,000. That is a lot of money, but the impact of development to a city, and I'm not talking about the roads and the plumbing systems and so forth that you developers put in your individual project. I'm talking about capacity that cities have to provide for that project to be able to, for the residents who will eventually buy into your project, for us as a city to be able to sustain them. That infrastructure has got to be, that capacity infrastructure has to be there. And that is paid for, once again, through you and eventually your buyer in the form of impact fees. Now, impact fees, controversial. I mean, I'm a builder, I hate to pay them myself. But unlike the marketplace that determines all of the other pricing we've been talking about, impact fees by law are required to be precisely cost-based. Now, I don't think it happens exactly right every time, and I think all of our cities would tell you that we work hard to try and make sure that our studies and the assumptions are correct. But Stacy recently, in one of our impact fee studies, found a significant flaw in the engineer's calculations, and it resulted in a fairly dramatic reduction in the eventual impact fee that was adopted for our newest Parks and Recreation impact fee study. So I think the point that I want to leave you with is that everybody in this room is trying. Cities are trying. Is there more that we can do and ought to do in the way of improving our ordinances and processes and so forth? Yes. But we are not the full solution to the housing crisis. We will continue to do everything we can to improve affordability within our communities. My city happens to have the highest average home price in Washington County. So my problem is maybe bigger even than some of these other mayors. How do we in that environment produce housing that will be affordable to the 2,500 strong workforce that's going to have to come in to support Black Desert, for example? What happens when you hire a new firefighter or a police officer? Where are they going to live? Can they even live in Ivins? And so, as you know, this is the huge challenge that we face. We happen to have a very active affordable housing task force that's looking into all options that they can to try and come up with solutions. And I firmly believe that if we stop the blame game, and that we as cities, working with state legislators and the development community, continue to just put our heads together and come up with ideas that we can try. Some are going to succeed and are at least going to have an impact. But always bear in mind that the reason for the problem is not us as cities, it's not you as developers, it's a combination of many things, but primarily it's the forces of the free market.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next mayor is Rick Rosenberg. For all the Aggie fans out there, he is a graduate of Utah State. University in engineering, and he's the founder of Rosenberg and Associates. He has been in public service for 29 years. He's started his time off as a planning commissioner, worked his way up to city council member, and is now, are you in your 18th year as mayor? So been in the Santa Clara City mayor for quite a while. Another mayor who brings a diverse background to the job of mayor, having been an engineer, Mayor Rosenberg. We'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Sean. I just want to pick up where Mayor Hart left off regarding community impact fees. Throughout my career, I've designed public infrastructure for going on 40 years. A lot of it for new development, a lot of it for the cities themselves. I've worked with pretty much every city in Washington County on either development or a public works project. And I've watched the cost to install those improvements and the requirements that are input on doing those projects increase significantly over that period. The federal government, in its infinite wisdom, has made it harder and harder to get projects permitted. Anything that involves federal funds or has a federal nexus with sensitive environmental areas, wetlands, floodplains, those types of things can take years to get things approved. You guys understand better than most the time value of money and the time it costs, or the money it costs when projects are delayed and you can't get to them. City collects impact fees to put in major projects that maintain the infrastructure throughout the community. So we've always got water tanks, and we've got transmission lines, we've got substations, we have sewer treatment plants. Those are things that individual development can't do by themselves, or becomes very cost ineffective to do by themselves. So we collect impact fees to help fund those projects. To do them in a lot of cases, especially a smaller community, they have to go borrow the money, assuming that the development is going to come and pay back the bond to put that infrastructure in, because you can't just add on 20 lots to a sewer treatment plant, or you can't just add 20 lots to a water tank. These are things that it takes a significant number of units for the cost to break down and share, in an efficient manner. And so I've been through that. Back in, on the city council in 2001, and we bonded for some new city improvements. Thought everything was hunky-dory. And then Mayor Drake decided to go work for the county, and I got put in to replace him as mayor. And like 2 years later, the Great Recession hit. And now we have those big bond payments that the city had relied upon new development to help pay the cost of that. And Santa Clara went from 70 permits a year to 4. I can remember standing in front of a lot of members of this group and being really puffed up because we had 4 building permits that year. And I remembered having to go to Bank of Utah in Salt Lake, and they called it unbuttoning the kimono, and basically telling our lenders how I was mayor was going to make sure that our bond covenants were met. And I actually asked them, well, what would you do? Would you foreclose the city? Are you going to take care of our streets better than we could? Maybe that's an option. We'll just let you take care of it. But it was a hard time. It's something that I've told my council I will not go through that again. And so we're very careful now when we bond for projects. And the impact fees are important to be able to do that. Cities get hit a lot of times about, can you lower your impact fees? Well, like Mayor Hart said, not all the cities charge 100% of what the state code allows on their impact fees. We've lowered that already. We get a lot of pressure when we go through a capital facility plan study or an impact fee study and consider new impact fees. And a lot of times we'll lower that amount. We won't charge the 100%. We'll do a lesser amount. Cities have done that. It hasn't really impacted the cost of housing. Cities are looking at reducing level of service. We've cut out some of the parks in our master plan, and I think some of the other communities have done that as well, to where we're not planning on building as many parks or as many square footage of park area per home as we were a few years ago. That lowered some of the impact fees, but it also lowered the level of service that we're providing to the communities. We can only do that in certain things. The state makes us maintain a specified level of service in our water and in our sewer. The residents demand a certain level of service with our roads. That's one of the biggest things we get hit with is transportation complaints. Too much traffic or poor condition of the roads. The residents demand that. So there's only a certain number of things that we can change. Parks is kind of taking the whooping right now. So we've tried doing that, level of service. Hasn't had an impact. Mayor Hart said, we're not immune to the other costs out there, inflationary costs. Capital facilities plans are on a 5-year cycle. So we're looking at engineers' estimates, and bless the engineers in the room, they do the best. But if you're trying to tell me, go back to 2018 and tell me what prices are going to be today when we go to put that project in. And sometimes you do good, and most of the time you don't. And so we have to come up with those shortfalls. And a lot of times that'll fall back on the general fund. So we're going right back to the residents, the existing residents, the community, property owners in the community, having them pay for that shortfall. So it's important. And it's something that we can try to control, but we really can't. Cities have got challenges the same as President Rushton just said with labor. Santa Clara City is a small city. We have a smaller staff than a lot of the other cities out there, except for maybe Mayor Bruno. We've got her beat. But maybe she may have a bigger staff. I've got 6 open positions right now on Santa Clara size staff, everywhere from fire chief to a court clerk, lineman. We have a hard time filling those positions. We advertise the positions. Just like President Rushton said, we get applicants. They come down, we negotiate a new position, make an offer. They try and find a place to live, and they can't. They can't afford to do that on a public position and the salary that goes along with that. So they turn it back and we re-advertise. Or this is what happens a lot. We go to Mayor Randall's staff and we pirate somebody. They're already trained. They've already got a home here. Bonus. But what happens, and it's happened in the engineering business for a long time. We pay them with a little bit more money. They come over. Now I have to raise the salary of everybody on that level that works for the city to keep up with this new guy we just hired from St. George. And St. George has to raise their people to try and get them back. And so we just keep fighting over the same group of employees, firefighters, police officers. None of the cities or the county down here are immune from that. We've had people leave for just a couple dollars an hour to go to a different city, and that leaves us in a hole. Now that level of service that we're providing our residents is dropped again. Now we're paying overtime for public safety people to fill that gap. That's coming out of your budget to pay for that overtime. We can't keep employees safe. That's something that's facing all of us. And until we get the housing thing fixed, that problem's going to continue and probably get worse. That level of service that we provide to our residents is dropped. Think about the quality of life that you enjoy. Think about the reason that you're here. This area has a very high quality of life. The people have worked for many generations to provide for their kids, for their family members, for their communities. We provide a very high quality of life. And you can say what you want about the beautiful surroundings. And yeah, do they play into it? Sure. But if we didn't have the medical service that we have, if we didn't have the very good utility services that we have, a high quality power providers, I look around and I see some of the public works people here. And I have tremendous respect for them in the quality of life that they provide to our residents. We've got good roads. People complain about traffic. I can get from Santa Clara to my business in 9 minutes. If I lived in anywhere else, Wasatch Front, Vegas, I'm going to have a lot more than a 9-minute commute. And that's on a bad traffic day. If I don't get any of the lights. We live in a great place, but if we don't solve this crisis, the quality of life in our communities is going to continue to degrade. And then think about that. Would you want to move to an area that doesn't have a very good quality of life, that doesn't provide high quality services? Where you worry about your police getting there on time and your crime goes up? If we can't get EMTs to your house, if you have to sit in traffic all day, if your power is going out on a day like today for extended periods of time, or that you have a fire and the water pressure in the system isn't there, or the tank goes dry, all of those things have happened. You don't hear about it because we've got really good skilled people that work for the cities that keep it going. We have tanks that empty and figure it out and they get more water in there. We've done a great job of keeping that system operation. But if we don't have good people working in those positions, we don't have the funding to pay for it, that quality is going to change. Now they asked me to talk about NIMBYism. It's one of my favorites. And we've all been there. We've all been in the public hearings. I've been on both sides. I've been in the audience complaining. I've been with the applicant trying to defend it. And now I get to sit on the podium and try and keep council going through the efforts. The NIMBYs have got some great tools that we haven't been able to take advantage of. Social media, personal attacks on public officials. It's like a game. Who can shoot the best arrows? And they share them. And I've got council people that I've worked with over the years who've been driven to tears who will call me after me and say, I can't do this anymore. I can't be subject to those attacks anymore. I've got to do something different. I've had husbands and I've had wives call me and say, what can you do? This is getting out of hand. And there's not a lot that you can do. Like buck up, Buttercup, you're here for the long haul. It's no fun. We need to do a lot better job of educating the public. They need to understand that, yeah, you may not want that high density project down the street from where you live. But if you don't have the people that are going to live in that high density project around, then when you go out for dinner, you're going to be waiting a long time. When you go over to the hospital, you're going to be sitting in the ER for a long time. When you need a nurse, or if your kids need a teacher, or a teacher's aide, or worst case, you need a policeman at your house, or you need a fireman at your house, you might be waiting a long time. Because those people need that type of housing in order to relocate here. If you want to, pay something simple as paying your utility bill or going to court, you don't want to wait a long time for poor service. That quality of life is going to change if we don't do it. Probably the single most important thing that I think cities can do. I really got this, so I want to go back to getting in the bottom of the finger. Say elected and appointed officials need to be engaged in the dialogue. We need to make finding solutions to attainable housing on the same level as importance as we look at expanding our tax base. Cities are extremely active and proactive in trying to expand the tax base, new commercial projects, things that can generate sales tax, that can help fund some of these improvements that we're talking about to maintain that quality of life. We need to go after attainable housing projects with that same amount of vigor. We need to take it seriously. We need to work to and be assertive. And this is something hard for council. I can see a few council members out there. This is something that is not easy for you to do, to be assertive in the face of your neighbors. This project is important for my community, not just for that applicant. This is important for the community. And you guys need to get on board. We need to do more with, we're real active in job creation, job numbers. We created this many new jobs in the state. We hear that a lot. How many new homes did we create in the state? How many new attainable homes did we create? Where's that report? That needs to be on that same level of importance with all of our elected officials, from the local level to the state level. And we need some pushback against the feds, or there's going to be a mandate, and nobody in the room is going to like the mandate. We need to work together. It's going to take everybody, the builders, the bankers, landowners, the cities, legislators, realtors. Nobody's going to be immune. Everybody's going to have to work together to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Rosenberg. I'll point out to the engineers in the room that he said, bless the engineers. No one ever says, bless the attorneys, right, Dad? I don't know. Thank you, Mayor Rosenberg. Next, we have Mayor Michelle Randall in the city of St. George. Mayor Randall is the first female mayor of the city of St. George, and we're proud of that, and she is justifiably proud of that as well. She has lived in St. George since 1978. However, there is no birth year listed on this bio. So, but I would say if she's been here since 1978, she's almost a native. And she did marry a native. She and her husband Tony were business owners here in St. George, and she got involved with the city, being a man for city council, was on city council until she was appointed mayor to fill the remainder of Mayor Pike's term, and she was reelected to her first full term in November of 2021. She's on numerous boards, including the board of the Utah League of Cities and Towns, and very active in that. And we'll turn the time over to Mayor Randall.
Thank you, Sean. So, yes, I did move here in 1978. I was 12. You can do the math. But the reason I was able to stay is because I was fortunate enough to marry somebody who was born and raised here, whose father owned a business here. And so, as all my friends were having to be exported out for jobs, we got to stay and raise our family in St. George. And now the jobs are here, but now we're having to export our kids out for homes because the home prices are so expensive. And to jump on Rick's point of NIMBYism, which isn't on my talking points, but we hear everything. Tony and I started in an apartment. How many of you started in an apartment? Or almost everybody in the room started in something very small. And we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with 2 kids for 5 years until we could afford our first home. And we were in a great apartment complex, and police weren't there every day, and there was no prostitutes to my knowledge, and drug deals going on. And that's what we hear whenever a high density project comes in. Every excuse possible. The crime's going to increase, and we, believe me, we have heard about prostitution happening. And you just shake your head, and these are people that are living in really nice homes that forget that they had to start somewhere as well. So I really appreciate the council that we have that just tries to think back of where they started and say, no, there's certain places where high density works, and we're going to put it there. So one thing, I get hit up, I get to be on the radio. I keep saying I get to be on the radio once a month. my favorite thing to do. And besides traffic, the second complaint I always get is home prices. And I'm not sure where the public perception is that we can fix, as a city, we can fix home prices. We could build workforce housing like Park City has done. That would go over like a lead balloon with a lot of our constituents. And so we have tried to work hand in hand with our home builders. Suba is great to work with, and I see Stacy here, and I see a lot of the builders in the room that I respect. I've been accused of being in your pockets, and my bank account doesn't show that. So on the way out the door, no, I'm kidding. I know you're recording this. That's a joke. But I am accused of that all the time. Oh, you're just trying to look out for the builders. That's all you guys care about is the builders, the builders. Well, yeah, we care about the builders because we need homes. We need homes. Imagine if we just put a moratorium on building right now, what the price of a house would be. I mean, it all boils down to supply and demand. So there's a few things that the city of St. George has been accused of. Our process is too slow. It's taking forever to get things through. And we really looked at that this last year and said, what can we do to improve our processes? And so we have improved our turnaround time. I think there's always room for improvement, but we've made strides in that effort. There are times, and wouldn't be any of the builders in this room, but there's times we receive insufficient plats and that have to be sent back. Or I had a guy come up to me one day and he was so angry, and he said that we had been sitting on his plat for almost a year and chewed me up one side and down the other. And so I went to the building department and it was still with the engineer. And so I'm just throwing things everywhere. It was still with the engineer, and he found out. I didn't call and tell him that, and he found out, and he called and apologized profusely. So sometimes it's not always on the city's fault. Sometimes it lies with the building side, not your firm, of course. So we are trying to pick up our turnaround time so the builders aren't having to wait so long. And one thing is we don't charge an upfront plan review fee when the building permit application is submitted. And so we ran some numbers, and in 2022, 1.4% of the building permits that we had come through, they never followed through, picked them up or anything. In 2023, it was 1.2%. But that's taking time from our staff on projects that are serious, that builders want their stuff done, reviewed, and out there. And so we do run into that. Our building inspectors have a 1-day turnaround, and we verified that number, and they are out there within 24 hours. The problem that we're running into is 27% last year of housing inspections either failed or they called for an inspection when they weren't ready, to probably just get in the queue, and then we get there and they weren't ready for us. And so that's taking away time from a city to be out inspecting projects that are ready to go and have all their ducks in a row. And some people aren't happy about this, but I'm really happy about this, is that final plats have now been, since 2019, are administratively approved. And our preliminary plats don't come through the city council anymore. They go to the planning commission. And some people say, well, the planning commission isn't elected. And they aren't. They are appointed. But sometimes I think that where they're not elected, they have more of a reason to really look at the project and not say, well, if I approve this, then I'm not going to get voted. Nobody's going to vote for me again. They're looking at the project as how does it really benefit the community? Does this benefit the community? Is this going to really help? Is this where the density needs to be? And so that's something that we've done. Another issue that we're having in St. George, and I know other communities are having it, but where St. George is the largest city in the county, is short-term rentals. Now, we have zones for short-term rentals, but in 2017, we ran our short-term rental, a study on how many short-term rentals were out there. And we had over 2,000 illegal short-term rentals. And that's taken away from our housing product, that somebody could be renting that house or buying a house. Think of that, the 2,000 homes. That's a lot. And the legislature has tied our hands about going after them. We used to be able to book them on VRBO or Airbnb or whatever. We can't even look at those sites now to go after somebody. We have to wait till complaints come in. An example is my daughter, right across the street from her, her neighbors they kind of built a mini apartment and onto the back of their home. And they were renting it out as a short-term rental. And they're on a cul-de-sac. The neighbors all know everybody, but nobody knew who was coming into that short-term rental all the time. And a family from Germany rented this short-term rental. And the husband went out and left the wife and kids at this short-term rental, got extremely drunk. When he came home, he forgot where his short-term rental was, ended up in somebody else's backyard, who happened to be an attorney, Sean. And let's just say that attorney has 5 daughters, and he was not happy to see a drunk guy trying to get in his back door and assaulted him. So that family shut down their short-term rental. Now they're renting it long-term, which is great. My daughter knows that there's 2 families that live in that home, and she knows them both. And with her kids out playing and stuff, she feels safe. So we do have that issue. Another issue we're seeing is fractional housing. So I'm on somebody's email list. I don't remember what realtor firm it is. But I took a screenshot. And this is a new listing. Experience the luxury of Southern Utah living in Desert Ray, a stunning home in the highly coveted Desert Color Resort. 8 bedrooms, 11 bathrooms, sleeps 37. Private pool, steps from the lagoon. To buy in 1/8, you can buy 1/8 of this home for $420,000. And if you can't use it during your period, you can rent it out as a short-term rental. And we're seeing that a lot. And I have one in my neighborhood, and my neighbors all called me livid. How can you let 5 people buy a house and there's nothing we can do? It's not against the law. But people are really upset about that, and they come to us. And the governor's now on board with trying to get a handle on the short-term rentals, I think, because of the housing shortage that we see. And so hopefully we'll see some legislation change this next session to where we can go after those who are illegally renting. We had 2 homes in Bloomington. One said it slept 40 and one said it slept like 35. It was in a neighborhood. The neighbors finally went out and had yard signs made like you see in a campaign that said, neighborhoods are for neighbors. They had charter buses pulling up in these homes. And that's not what most of us signed up for when we moved into our neighborhood. Now, if I am moving to Desert Color, I know that there's short-term rentals. If I'm moving to the Ledges, I know there's short-term rentals. If I'm moving up to the Green Valley area, I know there's short-term rentals. And that's different than when you buy a home in a neighborhood and then all of a sudden the person next door just turns it into short-term rental. So, because we want to know our neighbors, and and that makes us feel safer in our community. We have a lot of infill lots in the city, a lot in the downtown area. Some of you would be really surprised at some of those older homes in downtown, how big of a lot they are on. Huge. And like an acre lot, and you see this tiny house up front, and you don't see that it goes on forever in the back. And so we need to get creative on what we do with these infill lots downtown, or where I live. I'm now in the ghetto. I live in Bloomington Hills, North Bloomington Hills. But in the last couple of months, DPS, I've been on lockdown twice for bank robbers and a murderer. And DPS helicopters circling and circling and circling. So Sean used to say he lives in the ghetto, but I got him beat because DPS hasn't been circling his house for hours. So when Tony and I, yes, it was 30 years ago, we bought our lot. It's a quarter-acre lot. We bought it for $18,000. Right now, in Bloomington Hills, the ghetto, a third of an acre lot is going for $125,000, and 2 quarter-acre lots that are by me are going for $205,000. Think about that. I mean, this isn't Entrada. This is just your a subdivision that's been there for years and years, that was annexed into the city long before my time. I really think that we can work with our building community and with all of the stakeholders that Rick mentioned, that we can come up with solutions. We can take some of these infill lots and say, let's put a couple of townhomes back there. There are places for more density around our community that people wouldn't even notice. And maybe it would be a lot cheaper. There's things that we can get creative on ADUs. Troy Ants mentioned a project last night that I was like, well, why did we turn that project down? That we're going to revisit, Troy. But it's building a home with an ADU there, so that somebody that can buy the home, they can supplement their mortgage by renting out that ADU that's already comes with the home. An ADU is perfect for, well, right now I would live in one because there's a lot less housekeeping and yard work. But a young married couple, a couple with a baby, I mean, people are looking, they're desperately looking for somewhere that they can afford to live. And even our apartment prices right now are so high. I've got a nephew paying more on his rent for his apartment than I do on my mortgage. And just to quickly touch on the impact fees, we had our public works director and Scott Taylor, our water director, go through some of the major capital projects we have going on right now. And what we're collecting in impact fees are 40 to 50% lower or higher than what the impact fees are covering because of inflation. That's not the builder's fault. That's not our fault. That's the federal government's fault. And anytime you get the alphabet agencies involved in anything, costs go up, the EPA being one. And so we were not charging 100% of the impact fees. Nobody wants to do that. But just as the prices have gone up on building a home, prices have gone up on building everything, and that doesn't preclude the city. So I just think if we all can put our heads together, we can come up with some solutions and do the city. The only tools we have in our pocket, is zoning and some ordinance changes to really help you be able to get that product out there that may be more affordable to our community. Because just like Rick said, people come here, they look around and they're like, we want the job. You're offering a good a good wage, but we can't afford to live here. We can't find a place to live. So it comes back to that supply and demand, and right now we have a huge supply, a huge demand and low supply. So those are just some of the things the City of St. George is trying to work on, and we are always open to that dialogue with our builders. If you say, well, your processes have improved, but they could still improve, let us know. We want to hear that. We don't think you're the bad guys, and we don't want you to think we're the bad guys. We just need to work together and figure this out.
Thank you, Mayor Randall. Next, we have Mayor Barbara Bruno from Springdale. She is a native Utah, a native of Carbon County, and always good to have someone from Price down here with us and talking to us today. She has a business background with a BS in economics from Westminster College and a Master of Business Administration from the only university in Utah, University of Utah. She spent her career working in stockholder relations, sales, and marketing positions from companies varying from Northwest Pipeline to DuPont. And now she's a member of several boards and nonprofits, including YWCA of Salt Lake City. She's been on American Red Cross, varied background in volunteerism. And now she volunteers as the mayor of Springdale, right? It could be a full-time job, believe it or not, being mayor of a small resort city next to one of our busiest national parks in the country. And that alone makes it a challenge in trying to find affordable housing. But she has worked hard together with her council and in partnership with the park to try to maintain the village atmosphere of Springdale while still trying to figure out a way to house the people that are working in her community. And Mayor Bruno, we'll turn the time over to you.
Sean, I guess this is on. So I've been asked to represent a couple of different contingencies. One is resort communities and the other is small communities. And in the case of Zion Canyon, we're both. So I'm representing the town of Springdale, the town of Rockville, and the town of Virgin. And we are all towns, which means that we have fewer than 1,000 residents. So when you hear the distinction between cities and towns, that's what the distinction is. Three of us are on SR9 heading up to Zion National Park, so you all know where we are. And we resort communities have a lot of the same issues that the larger cities in Washington County have, such as cost of housing, availability of land. We're actually surrounded by mostly national park, but also by BLM land, so we don't have a lot of room to grow. We also have NIMBYism, believe it or not. So we have those challenges, but we also have some unique challenges. One of the things I really want everybody here to understand, and you probably do anyway, but I want to say it anyway, we are gateway communities to a very popular and busy national park. We all knew that. We all knew there was a national park there when we moved there or were born there. And we all own that and we all accept that. But we are still a community. And we still have people who live there full time. In Springdale, we have just under 600 full-time people. And we also want to be able to live there. We want our kids to be able to stay there. And we know that the visitor experience is incredibly important. But we believe that the resident experience is also incredibly important, and housing plays a big role in that. We, believe it or not, with 600 people living there, we have over 1,000 people that come into our community to work every day. It's hard for them to find housing anywhere, not just in Springdale. It's virtually impossible in Springdale. Some of them come from Cedar City, some come from St. George. I even talked to one person who comes from Mesquite. And some of them even live on BLM land boondocking, which is not, in my opinion, acceptable for families. But our employers are forced them to pay high wages, like the Oscars buffet, who everybody knows is paying $25 an hour for dishwashers, because that's what they have to do to get people to come up there and work. So we have always struggled with housing for essential workers and employees of businesses and the national park. But the proliferation of nightly rentals has wiped out virtually all of the long-term housing that we once had. it seems that everyone who wants to invest in Zion or in Springdale wants to build nightly rentals and obviously take advantage of the large visitation that we have to Zion. Last year, I think it was 4.7 million. The year before that, it was 5.2 million. So it's no small deal, and we can't blame people for wanting to capitalize on that. Springdale, speaking of NIMBYism, Springdale has created what we call a workforce housing overlay zone. It was passed by the council with a lot of opposition and a lot of support. And what we do is we offer commercial-like density in residential areas if the builders will build workforce housing. And I think the number is 75% of the units. These would be rental units. 75% of the units have to be occupied by people working in Springdale. They can move around between employers, but they have to be working in Springdale. So we're trying to create an instrument where we can get some workforce housing in place and that the housing is not tied to the specific job. So we had a local business take us up on it. Instead of building 2 units, they're building 5 on a property that they own, which is great. That's just happening right now. But we'd like to see some developers and builders take advantage of that. Instead, what they're building is high-end houses, and they tend to be mostly second, third, fourth, who knows, homes rather than primary residences. So again, that was a controversial issue, but in fact, we've got some planning commissioners that are still pretty angry about it, but we think that we did the right thing, and that's obviously what we have to do. I've talked with the mayor of Virgin, and she said that Virgin did what we did. We created what we call the cottage overlay zone and granted permission for a builder to build some smaller units that he was kind of touting as affordable units that would serve as workforce housing. Same thing happened in Virgin. Ultimately, both of those projects became market price developments. And in fact, the one in Springdale, they tried to sell as fractional ownership. And were unsuccessful with that, but those units are still for sale, and they're not affordable, not at any size, but especially for the size. The cost of land in our communities is prohibitive. Talk about lots going for $120,000 here. Our lots, small lots, start at about $500,000. So when you consider that, there's really no such thing as an affordable or starter home. We're working with Southwest Community Lands Trust, and see Charlene out in the audience, to create some housing ownership opportunities for moderate income and also some rental units, and that'll be great. But when you're paying $500,000 for a lot, you're not building an affordable house. Water is scarce. In fact, the town of Rockville is completely out of new water connections. So if you ever buy a property in Rockville, you're going to want to make sure it already has water. And they don't even have public utilities. Most of Virgin and a lot of Rockville are on septic systems. So those often require larger lots. So when the state is mandating smaller lot sizes, that doesn't really work for them. And that's going to be something that's going to have to be resolved too. Springdale is lucky, right, because we do have staff, but some of the smaller communities lack the staff. So when the state legislature passes laws around land use, they don't really have the staff to update the ordinances. So we were on these calls planning for this event, and somebody mentioned a community in Utah that still has a law requiring a minimum house size of 2,000 square feet. Well, then the state law becomes moot if it's conflicting with the local. I mean, I know the state overrides, but still, those are things that, you know, as these things change, smaller communities without adequate staff can't even keep up with. I was talking with our town manager earlier, and he said the changes from last year's legislative session have already cost us tens of thousands of dollars in attorney fees because we're trying to redo our local ordinances to come into compliance with the state. So that's an issue for us as well. So that's all I really have. I want to point out to you that at the back of the room, there are flyers that talk about what we are all doing to try to address the housing crisis. And I'm happy to answer any questions when that time comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bruno. Next, we have Mayor Staley from Washington City. And Mayor Staley is a true Southern Utah native. He's a 4th generation Southern Utah. And it's said that every time the Staley takes off their shoes at night, they have to dump this red sand out. there's so much red sand in your shoes, right? He has been the mayor of Washington City. Well, he took on the responsibility, I guess, just as Washington City was exploding and approaching 40,000 residents right now. A lot of us remember when Washington City was a very small community not that long ago. And so he was brave enough to step up and strap himself into the roller coaster ride that is Washington City right now. He has 4 children, and he's hoping that they all will stay here in Washington County as well. And Mayor Staley has a degree in accounting, and he is a small business owner as well. He owns an insurance agency, and Mayor Staley's he served on the planning commission, so he has a background in volunteering in the city as well before he became mayor. And Mayor Staley, we'll turn the time over to you.
Thanks, Sean. I really appreciate my peers here. I think they've articulated very well some of the challenges, not only the challenges that municipalities face, but also some of the intentional, deliberate actions that are being taken for the purpose of opening up attainable housing. And for me, really the issue is, as Sean mentioned, I have 4 adulting children, and I worry, will they be able to buy a home, have that same opportunity that I've had, that prior generations have had, especially here in beautiful southern Utah. So I really appreciate the fact that you're here, that you're willing to listen to us. What I'd like to talk about is, in addition to how we're all doing our part on the municipal level, I want to share a success story, and maybe a couple of success stories, because when the government, local government, works together with the private sector, we can address these challenges. So pre-COVID, we had Ed's Homes approach. I was on the council at the time. They approached us about an idea that we hadn't really thought of before, and that was a planned unit development, PUD homes, with significantly reduced lot sizes. So front, rear setback, side yards on either side setback, and these pads are 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. They're going either small 1-story or 2-story homes. And this was, again, before, as Mayor Hart mentioned, before pandemic, when things changed drastically. But as a council member, I remember us deliberating and communicating really well with the applicant's representative. And ultimately, the vote was taken to approve this PUD with hundreds of smaller homes and 1 common park amenity next to the Virgin River, which ties in to the Virgin River Trail system. And I kind of forgot about it. And then we start to see this development start to build out. And I honestly get chills when I think about what's doing that, because if you go down there in the evenings, not right now, it's too hot, but a few months ago, you go down there in the evenings and what do you see? You see individuals and families out being a community, being together, being down at the park. And I think this is a case where cities, we assert the influence that we can, but this is the building and development of community leading out in our community, taking to council, having our staff be flexible, open, willing to work with. And again, with the zoning, we adjusted the general plan in that area. We made the zone change, PUD, which is that custom zoning, and it was an absolute success. You see homes down there, last I checked, somewhere in the $300,000 to $400,000 range. These are true attainable homes. I think this is a great model of what we need more of. You look around the Washington fields, and historically it's been great for growing alfalfa. More recently, it's been great for growing families, but those homes have progressively gotten larger and larger. You look up into the Green Spring neighborhood, those are large, really nice homes. You look out into the Coral Canyon, and there's certainly a niche for retirees. And then last night at council meeting, we revisited and approved probably 400 or more apartment units. So the reason that I love this project in Sunrise Valley is it fits what we like to refer to in local government as the missing middle. And I'm not talking missing middle in terms of just townhomes. We're pulling a lot of townhome permits, but to me, it means something to have 4 walls of your own and a little bit of a yard. And even if most of that yard becomes a common amenity. So to me, that's an example of a success. Let me tell you two more. Shortly on the heels of that development was our friends with D.R. Horton. They came forward with Long Valley Trails, and that is a development of over 2,000 units of various sizes and styles of homes. So it makes a lot of sense. There are opportunities for people in various phases of life to come forward. And then most recently, I was pleased to look at a plat approved by the Plan Commission. I'm not so sure on that still, but yeah, some of the land use authority has been taken from councils and given to Plan Commissions by the state. But I did look at that plat, and it's a Burgess project down by Crimson Cliffs High School. And I looked at the surrounding uses, and I see some R110, R18, I see some townhome, and then I see these additional pads that are 1,500 and 2,000 square foot, and they are single family homes with common amenities, and I think that is part of the solution. So I would just maintain that from what you've heard from this group, we are adjusting, we are willing, we are able, we are part of the solution, we are doing our part. And I think as the private sector continues to lead out and bring things to our staff, to our council, I think we're not only going to be able to continue to have those nice custom homes, we're seeing these apartments like I mentioned, but most importantly, my focus is I want to see our kids, our police officers, our firefighters, our service workers, all those essentials be able to attain home ownership, not just rent forever, and assimilate into the fabric of this great community. So that's where I am.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. And Mayor Billings, if you'd like to have the opportunity, I can have you come right here and I'll share the mic with you. Mayor Billings from Hurricane City. Hurricane City is taking the spillover from Washington City and St. George and all of us as we're rapidly filling up and people are searching for affordable options. It used to be that's what you did, right? You went from St. George to Santa Clara or to Washington to get the affordable lot and then out to Hurricane, but I'm not sure there are any more affordable lots in Hurricane. And Hurricane has the potential actually to become the largest city in Washington County with the land area that they have around them. So I thought I'd give you just a few minutes, Mayor, to say a few words.
Sorry, I have to stand on that. Thank you for I was making a comment a little earlier after I was looking at some of the flyers from St. George, and I sent over this information and didn't realize it needed to be in flyer form, so it wasn't printed. But as I looked over the numbers here, just St. George has, it looked like 2,079 entitled lots. I was looking at Santa Clara has 631 entitled lots. Washington City has 18,000 entitled lots, and Hurricane City has 19,881 entitled lots. So if you look at affordability, maybe you can say, well, why are people not building on those lots? Well, then that doesn't come down to your state legislature or your city or even maybe the builder. It comes down to cost for supply and demand. I mean, we have to look at why is this issue? And when I think of 19,881 entitled lots, I think of a lot of opportunity moving forward, and hopefully that we can get some of that affordability in those areas. A couple of things within Hurricane City. We have what's called ADUs that are available, that people, if they have a lot, that they can build an accessory dwelling, at least one. Most of the residents have chose to change those ADUs from a single family or, someone, maybe a mother-in-law or a young family moving in to, when you talk about short-term rentals, that's really what they've turned them into. And we have many of them that have turned into short-term rentals. And so it has caused the housing crisis in Hurricane City. And right now we've made it so if you have at least 0.8 of an acre, you can have two. So one can be short-term, the other can be long-term. So we're trying to help in saying, okay, something's going to be, or you have two long-term. Something else, Hurricane City's passed a new ordinance allowing 15% density bonuses to developer if they restrict their 80% of their area for the median income housing. I think that's important to recognize that they're going to deed restrict it. It means that it's actually going to happen. When you talk about that, and they come in and there's no affordability after they say, oh, we're going to do this, this, and this, and then it's just all market driven. It's never actually doing that. Hurricane C's also approved hundreds of new units in mixed use zones for commercial and residential. And I'm one of those people that don't want to get rid of commercial. We're not going to have places for people to have jobs if we get rid of all the commercial for a residential unit. So I was talking to a developer not long ago that was pretty upset that I ended up being the final vote on this. They wanted to put a big residential apartment unit right downtown on State Street. And I said, as soon as we put the Maverick next to you, and they live a mile off of the main road, then we can kind of look at changing that. So we have to recognize that commercial needs to stay commercial. We can't just have everything in commercial go to a residential unit. We have to have both. We've got to continue with our workforce. And then also, our Hurricane City is currently considering and adopting the higher density of from just 10,000 square feet, like for a quarter acre, down to the R14, which is 4,000 square foot. So I know that that's in our planning commission currently. We've also restricted the expansion of short-term rentals, which I think is important because we do have a lot of recreational resort areas, and that's still available, but not expanding it. And our city's begun to process a master plan in the civic center with 15 acres, hoping that maybe we can include a little bit of workforce housing, but it will be through a private partnership, so other businesses will be doing it, not our city. And our city can't produce affordable housing. None of our municipalities build housing. This comes from the private sector. So we are trying to work together and make sure that we're listening to the development community and that we're helping them. I love when you said that about whether or not we're just like in the builder's pocket and trying to help them. We're not getting paid from these builders, but we do want our children. Part of the problem, and I've said this a lot, I'm from a family of 13 children. 9 of my siblings live in town. We chose to stay here, and our 28 grandchildren, chose to live here. My mom, I looked at our posterity, 68 grandchildren and 67 great-grandchildren that live here. It's attrition that's causing part of this problem too, not just people moving from California. We can't get mad at that. I have to look at this boy. I have 150 people that are related to me that live in this area, and that's just from having children and living here. And so I want them to be able to stay here and live here. We have to make things affordable and make things fit. And the last point is just additional growth comes with challenges, but 19,881 of those additional units will more than double our population. So when we're talking about our impact fees, we have lowered our impact fees. And it doesn't mean that the impact isn't less. It means we have to have more infrastructure put in so that these homes come in. And we have really been working on infrastructure in Hurricane City right now with the water. We have two new wells that are being drilled right now, a new water tank, transmission lines for power. I mean, it's very, very, very expensive, and we're trying to solve this problem, but it's working together.
Thank you, Mayor Billings. Well, now it's time for questions from the audience, and we invite you to come up and ask any of our mayors any questions that you might have, or if you have some suggestions on our ideas on how we can make ownership more affordable. But I would like to emphasize some of the topics that were touched on here. The uniqueness of Washington County being a resort community too, and the fractional ownership is a problem. That example that Mayor Randall gave, if you added up all of the money that they were for the 8 partners that would be in this unit, that's $3.6 million. There are homes that we see on the market where they're marketing them to five parties that are going for $500,000 each or more. And yes, if you want the second home and In Washington County, you might say, I can afford that 500,000. There are some people that can say that. But I can't afford to buy anything more, so I'll go into that fractional ownership. But what does that do to the housing stock and the prices here? Those short-term rentals that the mayor was talking about, those 2,000 short-term rentals, when we ran the study with the firm, it actually was the firm was owned by the former mayor of Garden City. They have a lot of short-term rentals up there, but when they search the internet, not just the large platforms, but the small platforms and local platforms, had over 2,000 illegal short-term rentals in St. George alone, which means that those houses aren't on the market for people to buy or rent. They're being used for another purpose. And so now, Mayor Billings correctly pointed out that all of us here have family members that we'd like to have live here, whether they be parents or siblings or our own children, and they need a place to live. But I would ask this panel here, when Mayor Rosenberg, you talked about NIMBYism, when you see the fierce opposition to some of these projects with smaller lots, more density, more affordable, typically do you tend to see the long-term locals that come out against it, or are they the new move-ins that come out against it?
It's location, primarily location oriented. So if we did this is gonna sound funny, but we did a project in Santa Clara Valley, just off of Santa Clara Drive, downtown, near the church. It's a small project that had 8 units on it. It was more than that. It was 8 duplexes or something like that. Relatively small project. The Valley came out and had their sickles and pitchforks and nooses to hang the council. And the developer was a longtime property owner, past state president, member of the state presidency, active in the community since as many years as he had lived, and one of the nicest guys in town. And his neighbors came against him hard. That project, was approved a number of years ago. It's just barely being built. It took a long time for him to, and he basically sold it to another resident of the city who was actually doing the development. They came out and they were very active. Go up in the Heights. And we had just recently a project that came forth that's kind of on the border of Ivins and Santa Clara. That in my mind, it was very well done. And the developer worked with the staff. The staff had some ideas. When he came in the first time, he was looking for probably 12 units to the acre. The staff worked with him and got him down under 8. And the project includes a mix. It buffers, there was R110 across the street from one boundary, and so we put R110 along those homes. So that those existing homes had a similar sized home and lot right across the street. There was a townhome project to the north, and so he had townhomes along the north boundary, so that the homes across that street were basically the same. Interior of the project, he had some more townhomes, and then he had some small single-family pads that were put in there. And so within that one project, there were 4 or 5 different housing types that kind of fit that mix of income levels and family size. And I thought was a good addition for that project. And the residents came out in force, the residents of the Heights. Now these people are primarily, I'm going to call them recent move-ins. Over the last 15 to 20 years, they moved into the area. And they fought as hard as anybody against that project. And I was very pleased when council, or planning commission and council recommended approval, approved that project. The next election cycle comes by, and one of the real proponents on the city council for that project, that in my mind was one of the best, most intelligent city council elected elected individuals that I had ever worked with in 30 years. And they get defeated soundly. That's the risk that you take when you try and do what I think was the right thing, and then you get burned to a crisp on social media, and then you get thrown out. You're gone next election cycle. Well, what's that going to do to? How much incentive is that giving you guys to run for council? I mean, how many really want to do it? It's hard to get people. It's almost like every 2 years I go on a recruiting cycle. And I try and identify people within the community that I think would do a good job on the council. Because as mayor, if I have a dysfunctional council, the fun is gone. Okay? I kind of enjoy. People ask me, why do you keep throwing your name in and getting beat up the way that you do? And I've gone through probably 6 elections because I was appointed and then I had to run for a year and then had to run for the cycle and all that fun stuff. Nobody's ever run against me. That's the reason I win. When I first started, we had some big time issues and nobody wanted to get involved. Santa Clara was trying to recover from floods and landslides, and nobody wanted that job. I don't think anybody wants it today, for sure, but we'll see. Because I'm done. I'm going to spend more time on the lake and less time at town hall. But those people come out based on where they're at. And they're very concerned about they keep saying they're going to drive their property values down. I'm thinking that since you moved into that house, your property value has doubled or tripled. In my case, 4 times. Did I do things to improve that house? No. Am I going to take advantage of that increased wealth? You bet. You betcha I am. So I haven't seen that really drive a property gain. But I do honestly believe if that quality of life in our community drops, that property value will drop. And we don't want to all be like Bloomington.
And before,
Right, exactly. You don't want to live in the ghetto.
Mayors, before you speak, I'm going to invite the audience again to come up. We have microphones on each side. Chad, would you make sure that the microphones are both on? And line up as the mayors are speaking. We'd ask you to state your name and Mayor Randall.
I just wanted to add one thing to what Rick was saying, because the other day we were talking about, I was telling him how much I loved Austin's project right there on the border of Santa Clara. And next to Summit on Sunset, if you're not familiar with where that is, and how well it turned out, and it's appealing to the eye. And I said I would live in something like that. And Rick said he has a neighbor that hasn't spoken to him since that got built. And I'm like, how sad is that? Because that's a really lovely project, and yet it causes friendships. And the other sorry, I'm just throwing things everywhere now. Thank you. And the only other thing I'm going to say is I've asked Rick, how does he get to run unopposed all the time? And he told me I need to learn to fish. So Rick's going to take me fishing. Maybe that will help.
Just really quickly, when we in Ivans began the process of updating our general plan nearly a couple of years ago, we conducted a citywide survey, sent survey forms to every household, retrieved an amazing almost 53% of them. So we had a pretty clear picture of what our residents actually wanted. When it came to the question of how do they see the future of Ivans in terms of residential development, they were given some options. Of course, when you're asked, what do you want, you're going to come up with your utopian view, right? But over 80% of our residents said we do not want any more medium or high density development at all. Everything else that should be built in Ivans should be on low density, large lots. Of course, that's not practical, and it takes a gutsy council to say we can't do that. the state legislature sort of helped out by saying, you're not going to do that. But we don't really want the legislature to continue to tell us everything that we need to do. I hope in the future we can work more closely with our state legislators before bills are enacted, so that we as cities can retain some measure of autonomy. There are bills that are passed that damage our cities that shouldn't, frankly, have been adopted in the form that they were. But it does take a gutsy council. I've got a council member here today. It does take a gutsy council to say, whatever happens in the next election, we have got to do the right thing here. And that's tough. And speaking of council members, Kurt, question.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to have this very important conversation today. I agree with you from maybe one of the council perspectives that we feel like all we can to control interest rates, supply chain reduction, we talked about all those issues. But there's one thing that I think that the state can help with, and to make homes actually affordable and bring about actual change. And that is utilizing SITLA or state-owned land for affordable housing. Now, as a school teacher, I remember the importance of SITLA land in creating infrastructure for our students. But I also taught kids that were living in a car. So when you come to school, you're going to be a lot more concerned about where you're going to sleep that night and learning. So I would like to know maybe what this panel's interest is in that effort in utilizing some SITLA land for affordable housing that would actually make a very, very, very significant difference in that. I know we've had discussions at the state. We have some state leaders here today. I think it's an important discussion to have. But anyway, I want to tell you how much I appreciate each of you and your efforts here today. Thank you.
Sean, if you don't mind. So for nearly as long as I've been mayor, I've been advocating the idea. So it was mentioned in this conversation that I had the other evening that small scale reductions in costs have no impact on the affordability of housing. There are some major things that can be done, and one of them is to take out the cost of land. Essentially, the Hawaiian Islands model, where you're buying a home on leased land, if you will, and SITLA is in a prime position to do that. It's good to see Greg MacArthur here. Thank you so much for being here. We've had a number of conversations with Greg. We happen to have one remaining parcel of SITLA land out there, and I kind of say the wrong thing sometimes, and I did, and somehow those are the things that show up in the Salt Lake Tribune. But so to clear the air here, we're not nearly as far along as a recent newspaper article suggested we are, but we are talking with SITLA about this. And the concept is that an entity like SITLA, or for example in our city, Black Desert, in desperate need of workforce housing, could acquire a piece of land, place it in under the direction of a housing authority, a local housing authority. By application, the homes are sold without the cost of the land included. And it's an idea that I think is worth exploring. One of the problems we have with housing affordability is that, for example, self-help housing, there are a variety of groups, but Habitat for Humanity is the one that's recognized. A home is built, there's donated materials and labor, the home is tailored to the income level of the successful applicant and so forth. Well, Color Country Housing built several homes in Ivy City under that program. And their requirements weren't as stiff as Habitat's. I think it was maybe three years at the most, that the successful applicant was required to retain that home under their ownership. And so what happens at the end of 3 years, for sale signs go up, and that market force that I was talking about takes over. They're sold at market value, and they drop off. It's like a conveyor belt. They just fall off the end. All of our cities are required to report to the state our affordable housing inventory. And it's pretty tough when everything you build this year, 5 years from now, is no longer qualifies because it's fallen off into the market and no longer fits in that price range. So the concept with SITLA that I've been proposing and exploring for a number of years is that a deed restriction would be attached to the sale of this home to a qualified buyer. And that is, the land is retained by SITLA or some other owner. So you have the cost of the home less the land. That's the numerator in the equation. Then you have a market appraisal. That's the denominator. Let's say the cost is $300,000. The appraised value is $400,000. That becomes 75%. That's the deed restriction. So at some time in the future, a new market appraisal determines what the sale price is going to be to another qualified buyer. In SITLA's case, I've always felt like the struggle that the Washington County School District has had retaining teachers, that it really ought to be a part of SITLA's mission to make sure that there is housing available for teachers and education administrators and so forth on SITLA land. So there's one concept that would significantly reduce the purchase price of a home. Yes, the land is not attached to it. There are bankers out here probably say, well, we'd never do that. A lot of adjusting would have to occur for this concept to work. I love the fact that Senator Lee tried to put BLM land in that same category. So through an RMPP process, you could include affordable housing in the acquisition of portion of federal land. I know you've been standing there a long time, but I think that we need to explore those kinds of ideas, and that's being done by HAC and many other organizations throughout the state, looking at deed-restricted, property-excluded kinds of housing projects.
And just a quick note on that, Kurt. There's a commission on housing affordability that's headed up by Steve Walbrook from the governor's office, and one of the items on the agenda on that committee is looking at public lands, not only SITLA, but federal, BLM, et cetera. So we will be looking into that.
Yes, so we have another question.
Yeah, my name is Keith Kelch. Hope you can hear me. I'm a builder, reformed academic. I used to be a teacher. Couldn't afford that anymore. I come from a lot of experience. In fact, I built those homes for you in Ivans. I worked for Color Country years ago. Sorry about how that turned out. And I've seen that happen over and over and over again. So I come from affordable housing, building affordable housing, and I've built homes for a living. But I was an educator, and so I put the two together. One of the things I've done is I have a YouTube channel where I mentor owner builders throughout the nation. I have 7,000 students in my program, saving tens of thousands of dollars without a general contractor. That's a huge feat. It's hard for me to say. I'm a builder. I'd like to have that feat. But there's a lot of cost savings out there. But that's not why I'm here today. I'm here today to actually give you a vision that can be a solution for frontline workers, first responders. That's where I used to be. I couldn't afford a home back then. I rented for the longest time. And there's a lot of things we can do. I live in downtown St. George. I did one of those infill things with the city. There's so many things we can do. There's amazing things. But the most important thing is we can't isolate the dialogue with government officials. I think that's the biggest mistake we've made right here. There's vision. Vision doesn't come from communities or from committees and councils. It comes from individuals. And sometimes individuals are passionate or aggressive, and they're not necessarily easy to listen to. And I'm one of those types of people. So I'm going to leave you here with a vision. It's a long game vision, but we really need to have a long game vision. Something that can grow exponentially year after year without anything on the taxpayers' shoulders at all. And it incorporates the entire community. I'm also a published author, written several books on community organization, specifically organizations without an executive head. We have to get our heads away from single central power control, managing something we think is a service for the community. It has to be a rising tide for all. I'm also the founding president of the Dixie Business Network. We operate under that model. We have no central control. We have an open consensus model, and on my wrist I have on here voice, vote, and value. It's our model. We protect each one of those things. We include dialogue. We include discussion. More more that you can include voice in the whole process, the more powerful we're going to be at accomplishing the things. I'm going to leave this here. I have a copy for each one of you. And working with Sharon Shores here with Habitat for Humanity, we're going to do this. We would love to try to get as many people on board for this vision. I can't pitch it. It takes a little time, but it's pretty aggressive. How aggressive we want to be with this is really all up to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sean, before we call on you, what I'll ask Stacy Young, would you mind coming up next to the microphone and just talk a little bit about the collaboration that we've had between the Southern Utah Home Builders and our local elected officials, because I think we have something here that's unique in the state of Utah. I would also recognize Ross Ford here from the Utah Home Builders Association. Thank you for coming down. And I've worked with Ross closely for years up at the legislature regarding affordable housing issues. And we appreciate you being down here, and we appreciate working with you. So we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So Sean, mayors, hopefully you guys don't hate me for this question, but because it's a hotly contested subject right now. But could you comment on what the Northern Corridor would do to help with affordable housing?
Well, surely the lots that will be built beside the Northern Corridor will be very, very expensive.
Any improvement that the cities can do to improve their transportation network is going to, in the long run, will reduce the burden upon the communities themselves. Without the Northern Corridor, say we don't get the Northern Corridor, and they end up going with the one-way model, that project is going to have a tremendous impact on the city of St. George, not just where the roadway is, but blocks on either side of the roadway. It's going to have a significant impact on a lot of existing homes that are already out there providing housing. They're going to go away. So any corridor that takes away housing, takes away the opportunity for housing, is, in my mind, going to cost all of us money as far as replacing that housing. We're already talking about a shortage. Now we're going to have to replace 10 or 20 blocks of housing to facilitate a corridor that could go across open space lands administered by the BLM. I'm not an econ major. In fact, I didn't do very well in econ. But even I can figure that one out. We need the BLM to come to the table. Santa Clara annexed 1,500 acres of BLM property to give us a place to grow because we're limited on our other borders by St. George and Hyde. And we can see it's easy to do our build-out projections without that BLM ground because it's right there. It's those two lots across the street. It's that farm that's left. That's it. That's all we've got. Council years ago annexed 1,500 acres. We went through the Vision Dixie process. We checked all the boxes we were supposed to check along the way. To date, BLM hasn't cut loose a square foot of that 1,500 acres. And we've been told they don't intend to. I'd love to see Sitla acquire a big chunk of that 1,500 acres, be able to work with the idea that Mayor Hart and Turtup have discussed, to be able to provide some additional area for the city to be able to expand. But that corridor is going to cost us money. If it's not, I mean, you can look at the options that are out through the NCA and understand the impacts and work with those people a lot. And Washington County has done a lot for endangered species, and as far as preserve and protect endangered species. They don't get credit for everything that they've done, but they have done a lot. They'll be sensitive on this one. We need those blocks downtown. St. George needs those blocks. All of us need those blocks.
Thank you. Mayor, we're going to turn the time over to you, Stacy, just talk about the collaboration that we've had with the Southern Utah Home Builders, and you'll be the last public speaker, and we'll turn the time over to Mayor Staley after that.
Thanks for giving me a minute, Sean, and thank you for organizing this event. All of you, we appreciate your service and your engagement and leadership on this issue. You know, I think I think it's fair to say we've had a good partnership and working relationship going back many years. But I think in the last couple of years, at least on our side of the equation, we've tried to step that up, be more proactive, and take a more multifaceted approach to the collaboration with various cities across the county. It would have been great if we were 5 years earlier, so we would have been maybe a little bit further along when the tsunami of COVID hit us all. But at least we are making progress in that direction. I think we have, within that multifaceted effort, I think we've got a number of forums in which we can tackle these issues collaboratively. I think there's a lot of great minds with a lot of great potential solutions to offer. And so, you know, I would just like to close by saying we are your partners in this. We're happy to be at the table and help solve this problem. So it's a short-term crisis, not a permanent condition. Thanks again.
Thank you, Stacy. And Mayors, thank you. Mayor Randall.
Real quick before Mayor Staley finishes up, I am so appreciative to rub shoulders with the mayors in Washington County. I think we have a great partnership. None of us are fighting. We all have our own issues we deal with, but we all come to the table. And Washington County is so great. You have SUBA and the home builders that are willing to come to the table and sit down with us, and vice versa, to come up with a solution and not just sit here and point fingers and do nothing about it. So I appreciate Chris kind of let out on doing this. I appreciate him doing that, and all of the mayors jumping on board and saying it was a good thing to do. And just want to say how appreciative I am to the elected officials that I get to work with, as well as the community members that want to help solve this issue too.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Staley, wrap up. Yes, feel free to go over there to the podium.
For just a moment, I want you to pause and think about the house you grew up in. Where was it? You probably remember the exact address. In your mind, you can picture the street. It brings back memories of family and friends. What did the house look like? Was the exterior siding, stucco, maybe brick? Was the roof a basic pitch? Did it have a metal roof, asphalt, or wood shingles? Did it have a simple square or rectangular floor plan? Or was it more complex? You likely even recall your bedroom and whether or not you shared a bed or room with your siblings. Did it have a garage? Did it have a carport? It had a garage. Was it a one-car garage, two-car garage? Where did you park your bike? Where was the family car? What did it look like inside? Did it have Formica countertops? Laminate flooring? Did it have that ugly shag carpet you wish you could lay on right now? What about the appliances? Were they orange or yellow? How long was that foam cord right there in the kitchen? If you're like me, you remember almost everything about the house you grew up in. For me, it was a 3-bedroom, brownish red brick, wood shingle, rectangular shaped house with a 2-car garage built by Warren Hennig. fact, the house my wife grew up in was also built by him with a very similar floor plan, except it had a basement underneath. It was her parents' first house out of medical school. It is also their last house. They still live there today. Over the years, both of these houses have become homes. These homes became stability generationally. They are the place kids and grandkids return to on holidays and special occasions. If you stop by my in-laws' house on 900 South in St. George, now retired Doc Graff will likely send you home with some of the finest tomatoes and zucchini you've ever tasted, grown from his own garden. Homes mean something. They're a big deal. My wife and I both grew out of a Swiss vine that was planted in Santa Clara over 150 years ago. We went back to Switzerland last fall to the neighboring cantons or counties where our ancestors lived. We ventured into a town called Amersville and found the old Staley house built on the banks of a river in view of the church in 1486 and still in remarkable condition. This home was in the Staley family until the mid to late 1800s. Then it became home for the Solomon family and remains with that family until this day. So my question for you is, where did you start? Did you rent? What were the circumstances that allowed you to buy your first home? How did that shape the direction of your life? To the builders and developers in the room, what you do matters. The homes you build matter. You shape society. Now, I'm grateful for each of you taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here. You've heard it said, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So state legislators, governor's office, homebuilders association, and of course, the media and other community leaders, you are all here because you care. You're here seeking to understand. And I couldn't be prouder of the work my fellow mayors and their councils and staffs have done to facilitate more affordable housing in Washington County. You will not find greater leaders anywhere in the state. Now, being south of the Payson-Dixon line, Washington County is often either lumped into the rest of the state or forgotten altogether. Our hard work, determination, and unity often goes unnoticed. However, our challenges aren't unique. There are other places in the state that are growing quickly like we are. There are other places in the state that qualify as resort communities, just as we do. There are other places in the state with state and national parks. However, I can guarantee you that no one is as united as we are to tackle the issue of attainable housing. Now, one of the marks of great leaders is their ability to collaborate to find solutions. Collaboration brings people together. Listen to different viewpoints. Propose solutions instead of complaints. And cooperate in good faith partnerships. I know that each of our mayors and staffs across Washington County are collaborators. Historically, we have called that ability to work together, often against seemingly insurmountable odds, the Dixie spirit. Each of us here today have shared some of the critical steps we've taken to get government out of the way, to streamline processes, facilitate more attainable housing in our communities. Certainly there is more work to be done, and each of us are willing to continue to do that work. But at the end of the day, there are forces in play that cities cannot control. Most importantly, I want to make it clear that government doesn't build houses. And I hope I'm not alone in thinking that government should build houses. They should not. We have some of the finest home builders in southern Utah. As I've mentioned in my remarks on the panel, these builders have been amazing to work with as they build out, in particular, a vibrant community for young families and first-time buyers in Sunrise Valley in Washington City. I'm confident I can speak for all elected officials here today in saying that we are willing and ready to work with builders who bring forward innovative, creative projects that will provide affordable housing options for our residents. The reality is that it will take an intentional, coordinated effort from all of us to create a housing atmosphere where our children and grandchildren, service industry workers, first responders, teachers, retirees on fixed income can afford to live out the American dream of home ownership. Now, this wouldn't be an effective gathering without a call to action, so I'm going to issue 3. My first call to action is to local elected officials. Be a good partner. Continue doing all you can to address issues that fall under the purview of local government. Be open, be flexible, be forward-thinking with your approach to and decisions regarding land use. My call to action for the building community. Build more homes like you grew up in, or like your parents grew up in. Now, if you grew up in an extravagant parade-style house, then build more homes like the rest of us grew up in. Lead out and bring forward projects that serve as models, common sense, down-to-earth models for the rising generation, creating affordable single-family residential housing targeted toward first-time buyers. Now, I see a few state officials here. My call to action for state officials: continue to look for creative solutions you can control and enact at your level of government, while respecting local land use decisions and authority. And if you can do anything to transfer the excessive supply of encumbered federal and state land back to the private sector at a reasonable cost, that would help tremendously. I'm quite confident that all of us working together can get the job done. The blame game doesn't work. The types of homes we need right now are simple, modest, traditional. We all have a critical role to play in getting there. And if we don't work together to do this, we risk becoming a community of primarily investors, vacations, landlords, which perhaps means short-term gains, but long-term could be major loss of the value to the community as a whole. Collaborating with respect and honesty is the approach to take here. You're building homes. Together, we're building communities.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to all of you, and let's thank the panel of mayors today for their preparation. And thank you all for coming. Have a good day.